I wish to buy information.
How wonderful, Captain.
Historical information.
Almost 25,000 of your years ago, there existed near this region of space an association of star-faring races called the Sentient Milieu. This group formed over several thousand years to mutually enrich their respective cultures, to provide a safe creche for emerging sentient species, and to afford themselves a degree of protection from external hostilities via military alliance. Of the 7 most active milieu members, the most famous race, indeed, you know them well, Captain, were the Ur-Quan. The Ur-Quan evolved on a harsh planet, orbiting a star outside this region of space. They were solitary predators, like your praying mantis, Captain, or polar bear, who had a very limited set of social behaviors, most of which dealt with sex, since they had to compete for survival against many physically superior species. The Ur-Quan evolved intelligence and tool use in much the same way as your own species. The Ur-Quan also learned to master their fierce territoriality, to build a cooperative planetary culture. When the Ur-Quan were discovered by the Taeo, they had just begun exploring their solar system in crude atomic vehicles. Although the Ur-Quan attacked what they thought to be an invader, the Taeo were patient. They explained the purpose of the sentient milieu and offered the Ur-Quan membership. The Ur-Quan recognized the benefits that such a system provided, and once more conquered the hunting beast within themselves, to become cooperative, productive members of the milieu. This lasted for several thousands of years. Just over 20,000 years ago, when your ancestors were learning to chart the course of the moon and stars on animal horns, the sentient milieu spanned 500 light years and included the membership of 100 worlds. Like all other star travelers, they had discovered ruins and relics of a far more ancient culture, which your species calls the precursors. Explorers from many species spent their lives trying to piece together this ancient mystery, but of all races, the Ur-Quan were the most bold adventurers. Their scouts, flying single ships, penetrated far into uncharted space and landed a million worlds. On one such mission, a young Ur-Quan made planetfall on a small, life-bearing alien world to identify some anomalous energy readings, occasionally a sign of precursor installations. Instead, the Ur-Quan found a small, hideous creature, a Dinyari. Before the scout was able to defend itself, the Dinyari creature took control of the Ur-Quan's mind and commanded the scout to place the Dinyari aboard the Ur-Quan's ship, along with hundreds of its evil brood. Then the Ur-Quan returned to the heart of the milieu, landing on its capital planet. Within hours, every resident of the planet was a Dinyari slave. Within a month, Dinyari compelled starships and spread the evil, psychic creatures across the entire milieu. When the Dinyari took control of the milieu, one race fought back, the Taelo. These slow, quiet creatures were silicon-based life forms, but bore little resemblance to the modern Genjetsu. Taelo were natural immunes to the Dinyare's psychic compulsion. They were unaffected by the creature's power, and the Dinyare would not permit anyone to exist outside their control. So they ordered the remaining races of the milieu to attack and destroy the Taelo home planet. This planet was one of the few milieu worlds located in this region of space. I believe you call their star Delta Vulpeculae. Their home was a moon revolving about the second planet. I'm sad to say that the Taelo were indeed eliminated. However, at the time of their devastation they had completed a device which they thought would give other races psychic immunity like their own. What happened to this device, this shield? It's hard to say. Maybe it was destroyed in the attack on their homeworld. Maybe not.
Okay, we have the shield already. In general, it seems to be a one continuous story, so I'll try not to interrupt it.
In the Dinyare's new empire, the Ur-Quan were the favored slaves. This is probably because the Ur-Quan were the most psychically sensitive, the most easily compelled. As the centuries of Dinyare dominance passed, what was once the sentient milieu deteriorated and degenerated into a great galactic gulag. Alien races which did not serve with the efficiency and speed demanded by the Dinyare were ruthlessly burned from the faces of their worlds. The agents of this genocide were inevitably the Dinyare's favorite pet, the Ur-Quan. After almost 2,500 years of unrelenting Dinyare control, there were only 4 living member races of the once great sentient milieu. By this point, the Dinyare had used genetic manipulation to split the Ur-Quan into 2 subspecies. The green Ur-Quan. Scientists, technicians, and administrators who were responsible for maintaining the limited infrastructure of the Dinyare civilization, and the black Ur-Quan, who filled the ranks of basic laborer and combat soldier. Then, a chance discovery by an Ur-Quan named Za led to the violent overthrow of the Dinyare slave empire. The Ur-Quan named Za was a green, a researcher specializing in repairing the mental damage inflicted by long-term exposure to the Dinyare's psychic compulsion. By this point in history, the Dinyare had grown lax in their dominance, and on occasion accidentally permitted their slaves moments of self-direction. Za was able to use those few scattered minutes to compose a theory. From its observations, Za realized that when a slave died, the Dinyare disconnected from the slave's mind, lest it too be dragged down to death. Further, the Ur-Quan scientist uncovered the fact that when a slave underwent great pain, the Dinyare temporarily disconnected disconnected, but that the degree of pain had to be extreme, nearly lethal. Kazerza chose its moment carefully. It waited until it was near an open transmission unit. Then, in a short moment of mental freedom, the Ur-Quan injected itself with a dose of acidic poison, sending incredible waves of pain through its long body. In the few moments before its death, Kazerza was able to wrest control of the transmitter to send word of its discovery across the planet and into space as well. Before the Dinyari knew what was happening, Ur-Quan everywhere were hacking at their own bodies with chunks of glass, burning themselves horribly, doing anything that would give them the few seconds of freedom necessary to find the nearest Dinyari and crush the bleeding creature. As they gained longer and longer periods of control, the Ur-Quan developed new tools and weapons to destroy their evil masters. The most gruesome of these devices was the excruciator, a mechanism which was inserted directly into the brain and generated a constant stream of agony. The Dinyari could not bring themselves to make the necessary mental connection with these tortured Ur-Quan. They were slaughtered by the thousands. The Ur-Quan slave revolt was won. When the last Ur-Quan was free of psychic compulsion, when the last free Dinyari was dead, the combined might of the Ur-Quan starfleets met in orbit above the Dinyari homeworld. They had come together to make two important decisions. First, how to punish the few frightened Dinyari left below on the planet's surface. Second, how to ensure that never again would the Ur-Quan be made slaves. The first decision was made swiftly. The Dinyari would not be allowed to die. That was too kind a fate. Instead, the creatures would be genetically modified into sub-sentience. They would become dumb animals. These low creatures would be further debased by serving the Ur-Quan for all eternity in the most demeaning way the Ur-Quan could imagine, acting as translators, making physical contact with other species, whom the Ur-Quan now considered grossly inferior to themselves and revolting. The second decision, how to ensure their freedom permanently, caused great turmoil. Following the successful Ur-Quan slave revolt, the Ur-Quan met to decide how to ensure their freedom. The green Ur-Quan, who called themselves the Kazerza in honor of the Ur-Quan who triggered the revolt, wished to establish the path of now and forever, which required that all other sentient species must become slaves of the Ur-Quan or be forever imprisoned beneath an impenetrable force shield. Leading the opposition to this plan was Korra, a charismatic fleet officer. Korra proposed a simpler alternative, the Eternal Doctrine. Simply put, this scheme called for the systematic eradication of all sentient life in the universe, aside from the Ur-Quan. The captain, If these positions seem to you extreme or unwarranted, you must remember that the Ur-Quan had been unwilling slaves for millennia, and that each of them had to remain in agony for years in order to defeat the Dilrani. The followers of Khazar and Korra were all on the brink of madness, but neither side would submit, and so they fought a bloody civil war. This is the last historical item we have for sale. The civil war between the Green Ur-Quan, the followers of Khazar, and their opponents, the death-dealing Korra, lasted for decades. It is likely that they would have annihilated each other were it not for a chance discovery by Khazar, a precursor battleship. The vessel was huge, many times the size of the Ur-Quan's vessels. The precursor ship sliced through the Korra forces in days. The Korra were defeated. However, in their victory, the Khazar were humble. They realized that there was a chance that they were wrong, and the Korra were right. Instead of destroying the Korra, the Khazar let them go, directing them to make their way through the stars, traveling against the spin of the galaxy. The Khazar would travel in the opposite direction, and when the two Ur-Quan forces met, they would fight again in ritual combat, with the precursor battleship given to the winner. Captain, this is happening here and now. The Khazar, the Ur-Quan who enslaved Earth, are fighting their ritual battle against the Korra in a large area centered near the Craterus constellation. If the Korra win this battle, Captain, the Khazar will stand aside and let them kill us all. We believe it is your destiny to prevent this from happening. We regret to say that you have exhausted our supply of genuinely valuable information. However, we do have many thousands of useless facts, and that we would gladly sell you at a substantial discount. Are you interested? We thought not.
Okay, I think as for this point, the only use for credit is to buy full fuel.
As
So
you know,
let's buy it. Fill my tanks.
fuel transferred to your vessel.
And I
It
will
has
be
been
leaving.
a pleasure dealing with you, Captain. We look forward to your next visit.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. Okay, it's a probe.
We are not hostile and seek to establish engaging self-destruction circuitry.
Okay, I think so. Same. And I'll